pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edison. At this time, board members, I would like to entertain a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes to approve our agenda. Thank you. At this time, we are happy to have everyone here, and thank you very much for coming to our board meeting tonight. And we have a great attendance, and we're happy that you're here. We also have public comments, and we have guests that are here too. So if you are a guest and you would like to address the board, would you please come to our podium?
Dear Mr. Edison and School Board of Levy County board members.
Would you state your name?
Sorry, Marisa DeHaven. This letter starts a little over 10 years ago. My husband and I had just added triplets to our family. Max, Marina, and Maya were born at 32 weeks, 2 days. They spent 5 weeks in the NICU, growing bigger and healthier so they could come home. A week after bringing the triplets home, Max quit breathing. He was rushed to the ER, where he was placed on a ventilator in order to stay alive. Doctors did not know what was wrong with him. They ran blood work, did a spinal tap, and ran more tests and blood work to try and figure out why he would not breathe on his own. A test finally came back with an answer of parainfluenza 3, a virus that causes a variety of respiratory illnesses. Maya and Marina were also admitted to the hospital for the virus. However, they were stronger than Max and were able to fight the virus off on their own. While the girls were admitted to the pediatric floor, Max was admitted to the PICU because of the severity of his illness. Mark and I ran back and forth between the floors while our older son, Micah, was being cared for by a grandparent. As a parent, this was the lowest point of our lives. Having a child on a ventilator, being able to do nothing to help them except pray to God that your baby would survive, because at this point, you fear that he would not. That changes how you feel about life. Max remained on a ventilator for 5 days before he was able to be weaned off and breathe on his own. We found out through one of the PICU nurses that parainfluenza 3 was running through the NICU. Apparently, someone who was infected came into the NICU and spread it to the babies. This must have happened just as we were getting ready to be discharged. One person coming into the NICU was all it took for the virus to spread to my 3 babies and other babies as well. This one person could have caused my son to die. Max continued to stay in the hospital until he was no longer exhibiting signs of illness. 9 days after being home, Max quit breathing again. Back to the PICU we went. This time the diagnosis was severe acid reflux. Medicine was prescribed and Max was discharged after a short stay. Fast forward to November, the triplets were 6 months old. We noticed that Max wasn't really acting like himself. I called his pediatrician to have him looked at. As soon as his doctor looked at him, he knew he was sick. He told us we would be going back to the hospital because Max had respiratory syncytial virus, better known as RSV. This virus causes infections of the lungs and the respiratory tract and can be fatal in infants. With Max's history, this was nothing to take lightly. He was admitted to the hospital yet again. He was put on oxygen and was monitored for O2 saturation. Doctors told us that at this point, he would either stay the same or he would get worse. Only time would tell. He continued to stay the same, so he was discharged, but we were told not to leave town and to bring him back with any changes. Since this time, we have not had any more health scares with Max. We are very diligent with giving all of our kids vitamins, feeding them healthy foods, and trying to stay away from others ill. We try to implement preventative measures so that we don't have to relive the worst time of our lives. Since mid-March, my children have been on lockdown. They have not seen friends, and they have not played with anyone outside of our immediate family. When we do go places that we may come in contact with others, we all wear a mask. I am not afraid of getting the virus myself, but I am afraid of Max getting the virus. We don't know what kind of damage has already been done to his lungs, nor what kind of havoc this virus could cause to his body, if any. I know I can't protect my children from all harm. They have proven this to me many times over. But as a parent, I must do everything I can to protect them. I tell you all of this to say that in all my years of teaching, I have never been afraid to go back to school. That is until this year. I do not feel safe sending my children to school. I know I have options, but I feel like it's a no-win situation. I can send my children to a school I no longer feel safe sending them to and worry myself sick, or I can keep them at home. If I keep them at home, I will have to leave the teaching profession to be with them as they are not old enough to take care of themselves for that extended time period. Every day I go to school knowing that if one of my students is in harm's way, I will put my life on the line to save that child. We are constantly saying that our schools are safe for our students. We do fire drills and active shooter drills monthly in preparation for if or when we will ever need it. But when it comes to a pandemic, where are all the safety measures? Is the virus going to trump the active shooter drills? Or am I still going to be required to hide in a bathroom with 20 students who are not required to wear a mask while someone goes around campus to make sure my doors are locked and I have my students in lockdown? COVID-19 may have a high survival rate, but what about those who don't survive it? What about those who contract it and have a lifetime of battles because of it? We don't know how this virus will affect our students individually or as a whole, but isn't it our job to protect them all? Or at least do everything in our power to try and protect them? We are installing hand washing stations, making traffic one way, and adjusting schedules for social distancing in the cafeteria and on the playground. Is this enough? We have other students in Levy County with similar stories to Max. We have students with diabetes, students with Guillain-Barré syndrome, students with asthma, students with parents who are battling cancer, students who live with older, sick grandparents because it's the only family they have left. Are we doing enough for our students? And not just for our students, but for all our students? I say no. I don't have the answers, just like none of you have the answers for this virus. But I have to ask, is this all we can do for our students to keep them safe? CDC recommends social distancing of at least 6 feet, hand washing, and masks that cover the nose and the mouth. Are we truly following these guidelines to the best of our abilities for our students? There are options that can still be made to make students, parents, and faculty feel more safe during this time of uncertainty. Hillsborough and Dallas counties have already made the decision to require face masks in schools. Levy County could follow suit. An infectious disease specialist, Peter Chin Han, MD, from the University of California, San Francisco, offers a mnemonic that he likes, the 3 W's to ward off COVID-19. Wearing a mask, washing your hands, and watching your distance. But of the 3, the most important thing is wearing a mask. According to CDC.gov, the CDC recommends all people 2 years of age and older wear a cloth face covering in public settings and when around people who don't live in your household, especially when other social distancing measures are difficult to maintain. COVID-19 can be spread by people who do not have symptoms and do not know that they are infected. That's why it's important for everyone to wear cloth face coverings in public settings and practice social distancing, staying at least 6 feet away from other people. If this is what the CDC recommends, then why is this practice not being enforced in our schools? I have an idea to keep those who feel safer wearing a mask with others who also wear face masks, but it needs to be explained in depth, and I don't want to take up any more of the meeting's time to go through the details. I would, however, be happy to meet with you all to discuss the idea in the very near future if you are interested. Teachers often confide with each other when they may not express their opinions and concerns to their superiors. I have spoken with fellow teachers, not just at Cedar Key School, but other schools in the district as well. There are quite a few teachers who are afraid of what this school year will bring. At Cedar Key School, we have right at 30% of our staff who are at high risk. They feel they have to work because they need the money, but they also are afraid that not enough safety measures are being taken to keep them safe. They have realized and just resigned themselves to the idea that at some point during this school year, they will end up contracting COVID-19, but they pray they survive it and don't infect others and their family. What happens when one of our high schools tests positive? I teach all of the students throughout the entire high school. Do we quarantine the entire high school for 2 weeks because we have just exposed every student in the high school to the virus? Are we going to find a sub that is going to come in and take over for 2 weeks, knowing they are in a room with students who were just exposed to COVID-19? We are already short on subs as it is. Teachers go to school all the time when they are not feeling well because there aren't any subs to cover for them. What is the protocol for a teacher to call in sick when they have a symptom or two, but don't know if it's just a bug that will only last a day or if it could be COVID-19? Once we go back to school, we have to assume that if we are not feeling well, that we are probably exposed to someone with COVID-19, and the symptoms we are exhibiting are those from COVID. Do we call in sick every time we feel under the weather? What happens when a student tests positive? Does the entire class quarantine for 2 weeks? Every year at the beginning of the school year, a virus of some kind is spread throughout our schools. Kids get sick. This year, that virus could very likely be COVID-19. I am a firm believer that face-to-face school is the best type of schooling out there. In my opinion, there is nothing better than being able to interact with peers and to be able to ask a question and get immediate help from a teacher. Having other students in a class to stimulate conversation and promote higher order thinking can't be received by online learning. I teach because I absolutely love teaching. I'm ready to start teaching again. However, I have a big decision to make over the next couple of weeks. And it is not a decision that I take lightly. I have already lost many nights of sleep over this, and I am sure I will continue to lose more. I just have to pray that I will make the right decision for all involved. I appreciate all of you for allowing me to come to tonight's board meeting to express my concerns in person. I realize that you are practicing social distancing during the meetings, and I commend you on taking precautions. In less than a month, we will be going back to school face to face. Are we doing enough to keep our students and faculty safe too? Or could we do more? Sincerely, Marisa DeHaven, mother of Micah, Max, Maya, and Marina DeHaven, and Cedar Key school teacher. Thank you.
Marissa, thank you very much, and we do appreciate your comments, and we are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have several public comments that were sent in to us, and I'm going to ask Mr. Delaney if you will please read those.
Sure. The first comment was from a Dr. Camille Ivey, a PhD, and he writes, I run a U.S. tech firm and spend the better part of my time in Dunedin, Florida. I understand that there are plans to bring students back to school at near full capacity in Levy County. We're in rollout of solution called First Guardian, which provides temperature pre-screening together with telemedicine services as part of the response, enabling safe return to schools for students, faculty, and staff. We are contacting districts that are considering returning at near full capacity in Florida, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and others, or have higher risk due to the lower number of local cases, for example, Los Angeles and cities in Arizona and Texas. Our pre-screening process actually leverages current research that suggests that asymptomatic students can be identified by establishing individualized temperature thresholds rather than population thresholds. For example, normal temperature at 98.6 degrees, fever at 100.4 degrees, or even home checks for fever above 100. I wanted you to know that the current state of the art for bringing students back to school early I've attached an at-a-glance document for you to reference that I would like to discuss with you. I think that's pretty valuable for all board members. For the district type mentioned above, we are immediately moving into a pilot with school staff or summer students if available, and then creating a rollout plan that would soon thereafter to execute as close to the start date for schools as possible. Because of the different return to school strategies being implemented in the different districts, we are customizing the First Guardian solution, which varies from periodic screening to a SunPass-like concept using wearable devices to meet the needs of the district. I or my team will be in touch early next week as a follow-up. We would like to get you for a pilot as soon as possible. I look forward to continuing the conversation and helping you with my best. Biology, PhD. And I should also say that I think superintendent is going to be prepared to address some of the questions that we're going through that were submitted by the public, if not tonight in a document, be prepared, like a frequently asked questions or a Q&A that will be available.
Just an FYI, this was a vendor that submitted the thing through the public.
So we're going to go through some questions, and I'll turn it over to the superintendent for how the response is going to go to those questions. But the next message is from Sherry Schuler. She writes, number one, can you make public what will actually be done to clean and sanitize rooms after exposure? Also, the procedure once someone, student or staff is exposed. Number two, how can parents and teachers expect to be safe if even with a small amount of students or staff at Bronson Middle High School this past week, it had to be locked down due to COVID? Number three, if an employee is diagnosed with COVID-19, will they be covered under workman's comp, and what will be the procedure? Next, Wendy Mirage wrote, my question is, if the school board is confident that our children are safe to return to school in the next few weeks, why are we not having a regular school board meeting instead of being online? If it's safe enough for kids to return to school with no precaution, no requirements, and no protocols, then it should be safe enough for us to have a public meeting as usual. Next, Carol Osteen wrote questions as a staff member. Number one, how will schools handle 6 or 7 teachers out at a time for 14 days from an exposure? Our school had to shut down with 1 adult causing and exposure and less than 100 people on campus. Increased exposures increased the staff, it increased the number of staff out. There are not enough subs to handle that. Additionally, students being at school and then home for 14 days to self-isolate from exposure will be a vicious cycle. I don't know the public effort to protect everyone and maintain effective, consistent education, but I can tell you from firsthand, from being in the classroom during the LCPC Summer Achieve program, the day the Bronson Middle High School exposure was identified, I can tell you it was chaotic and stressful, and we only had 8 students on campus. Number two, if I'm exposed at school and forced to self-isolate, will I be compensated as I would for a workers' compensation situation? Or will my time off be deducted from the bank of hours earned from years of loyal employment? From Carol Osteen. Next, we have a letter from Shanna Griffin. She writes, has the school board considered moving the first day of school back by a month to allow for more planning and to give the outbreak that is currently going on in Florida a chance to die down? Then we heard from Liz Lozada. If we chose to send our children back to school option and COVID cases occur at school, will the school shut down and the students will have to transition mid-course anyway to online instruction? So what will be the response to this? Finally, we heard from Emily Watt. Hello, in order to make an informed decision for my children, can you tell me where I can find the information on what will be the protocol for when a teacher, student, administrator, family member, etc. test positive for COVID-19? Will we follow the Department of Health recommendation In positive cases, will have to isolate for 10 days from the onset. Also, will their contacts have to isolate for 14 days of class exposure? Also, if they are exposed outside of school and asked to isolate per the health department, will work be allowed to be made up and absence excused for students if they fall into this category? In addition, I saw on the School Board of Levy County Facebook page that Bronson Middle High School closed its offices due to a COVID-19 related incident. What's the criteria for these sorts of closures for schools once school resumes? Lastly, what level of disclosure will there be to parents if their child has been in contact in school with a positive case? Specifically, will I be notified if my child has a positive case in their class, their teacher, bus, etc.? For clarification, I know we cannot be told the name, role, etc. due to privacy, but will we be notified of the known exposure? So I know whether or not we should avoid grandparents, high-risk relatives, or choose to isolate. Thank you in advance. I know these are very difficult and unknown issues that we are facing. Emily Locke, parent of 3 Cleveland students.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. Mr. Edison, do you want to add some more to the question and answers?
This is in a farming group, flat on new ground. We're doing something we've never done before. Just a full screen. One of the options you see here on here is a blended model for us in public education. That option didn't exist 3 weeks ago. So we don't even know, or we're not sure about what rules we're going to have to follow as far as guidance. So we're working on these things. And we have started putting together, what I say, a Q&A document, Melissa and Ms. Hires and a lot of others. And we started working on this and try to address some of these issues for both of our employees and our parents. And so that's what we're trying to do, and we'll make sure that when we get this, we'll include these questions in that document. I know some of them have already been answered or in there. We have a principals meeting on Thursday. We want to make sure we talk with all of our schools so we're all on the same page. And the health department is a big driving factor in all of these things. I mean, they're the ones that do the investigation, but they're the ones that want to do a lot of the contact. Just like, I don't know if anybody's experienced it, but they're a partner in this situation, so they'll be a part of this. And so I don't have all the answers, but we're working as best as we can to find them. We reach out, talk to other districts, going to be on a call again to find out what some of these people are doing and what some of the good ideas they're having. And so we're going to try to answer questions as best as we can. And sometimes the questions come at us a lot faster than we can figure out what the answer is. But we are going to try to do that and try to communicate as best we can.
It's very fluid. I think a lot of parents have concerns, rightly so, because cases are rising. I've gotten some information from ECUT today on what I was told this afternoon that a lot of districts are in the same situation we are, that we're in uncharted territory, we're having to navigate through as quickly as we can. But we are, the health department is going to lead us through this situations.
Marisa, my heart goes out to you.
If I may ask, you're going to put together a Q&A question. When can we expect that? And I'm asking, I'm taking off the school board member hat. I'm a parent. I'm in much the same situation as you are. My children have
We've got to build, but we've got to sit down. We've got to get some more players to go through here, because I want to make sure that the answer to the question in Bronson is the same answer to the question in Cedar Peak. So we've got to get here, and we've got to get other people to look at this thing and to do what ifs.
Okay. I just feel like we need to get the answers as soon as possible, because people are having to make decisions. I'm in that boat. I have to make a decision.
Our meeting starts with the principals.
And
survey due tomorrow.
Yeah. So, and again, the survey is just, where are you at right now?
would it, and this is, I can call Kaylee Wade anytime and get an answer.
Right.
Would it be possible to contact somebody from the health department and ask them to come to our next meeting and address us? Because I'm here to tell you, I don't know that. I've had 5 conversations with people in the past 2 days about COVID and what the protocols are and all that. got 5 different answers. I would like to hear it from Barbara Locke or somebody like that. This is what the process.
Our schools are not built for social distancing. Teenagers are not built for social distancing. And so it's a hard thing to do. We're in a business that's not built to stay 6 foot apart.
Yes, I understand that. I don't know how anybody else feels about it, but I would like to hear from the health department. We always say, well, we're going to defer to them and their protocols. I have no idea what their protocols are. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. This is what we want to do. And I'm sure somebody can come talk to it. And it's not knocking Kaylee. I believe Kaylee's overloaded. But I would like to hear it direct from the horse's mouth. And I believe in being proactive. And this is what's going to happen. And if that's possible, I would like to see that. And that way, people watching at home, who knows, maybe the whole trend will turn around and everybody can be here, can see that, and parents can hear, okay, so this is what it is. Okay, so this is what it is. And that way, some of those questions will be answered by the health department right there. Anyway, I'll let it go for now, sorry.
Mr. Etheridge, do you have any comments?
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Asbell, for knowledge standpoint. The thing about it is I don't know that we have anybody who knows. I mean, the part that everybody's moving with this thing as we go. And, you know, I hear and I see, from a professional standpoint, dealing with virus, I've heard about delay and, a lot of different issues, but I don't know how long a delay to gets us to the point. I mean, I think if you're on delay, it's a year at best. Just cancel. I mean, if it's to the point you're a year away from a potential vaccine that would be effective in our society. So, having visited a couple of those vaccine plants, so I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. I do know. I know that I talked to a lot of people who are ready for their children to go back to school, and I know there's cases, isolated cases, and people who have real fear and concern of it. And I get it. I do. I appreciate it. So, but there's going to be different options available to, and it's going to end up being a personal decision for a lot of people, and they're not going to be easy decisions. So.
Thank you. Mr. Cowart, do you have any comments?
I've just kind of been taking all this in and listening, and obviously my heart goes out to Ms. DeHaven. I've been very, very fortunate. So I've got 3 healthy children, and have not had a situation other than, tonsils out or something like that where we've had to deal with any type of medical facilities with students. And I think there are some unknowns, and I think that part of the issue is that we've been given a directive by DOE and the Commissioner of Education and the Governor, but yet we haven't been given the resources to make sure, because we're not like we were in the spring where we're flying the plane and trying to build it, but we are trying to build the plane before the volcano kind of explodes, so to speak, on the island. And so we've got a little over 3 weeks to put this in the process, and I appreciate the superintendent trying to develop frequently asked questions and reaching out to NEFECT. I think that's the biggest thing, that kind of looking through this and figuring out, if we were to decide that we were going to mandate masks, Mr. Delaney, once we do a mandate, we would be on the hook for providing those masks and all of that. Am I correct in stating that?
Yes, it's an expectation of students, and we in business of providing free public education. Yeah, we would need to be prepared to provide those.
And if it's adults, would that be working conditions that have to be negotiated?
I believe.
I missed your comment there, Mr. Superintendent.
I just said if it's mandated for adults, would that be working conditions and have to be negotiated?
And I think the answer to that is yes.
Okay. So these are all things that we're trying to work through these parameters and come up with the idea. I think there's a lot of information out there. There was some information out there about a German school system of about 2,000 students, about them opening back up in May and the successes that they had. there. And I realize that we're kind of our own entity, and so to speak, that there's no district exactly like Levy to say and kind of do something that way. But I do think that we do need to clearly define what our protocols are, what happens if someone tests positive, if they've been, and obviously you can be a situation where I'm in, where you're quarantining or self-isolating, and waiting test results back, and what we do then with teachers and classes and how we continue with that, we need to have that plan in place. And I also think that Mr. Asbell has a wonderful idea to have the health department, someone from the health department, to come and kind of walk us through this process. So, and appreciate Kaylee's willingness to always step up, and I agree with his sentiment that she's probably a little bit overloaded right now. So, thank you, Ms. Bergens.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Were there any other comments? Yes, Terry.
One of our readers asked, how do you social distance on school? The kids are double. That's a good question, How do you do that? I don't know.
And I think that we're covering some of the things when we go over that at in our back to school plans. But yes.
Why does the school board have to mandate masks? Just as many people, I think it should be our choice. So what does the school board have to mandate masks? It's like it's a violation of the Constitution, my constitutional right. I don't want to wear a mask, I shouldn't have to wear a mask. So what legal right do you have to mandate? Or can you explain that to me?
Mr. Delaney, I'll refer to you on that one.
Sure, there's broad emergency powers that come down from the governor when we have a situation like this. And I think that the court cases would uphold that. I think that the school district as a whole mandated masks for employees and students. There would be other alternatives that students can move their education that would not be in brick and mortar environments.
There was a statement at the last meeting, little Susie's mask, the liability with that, small children, they lose their coats, they lose their masks. Worms when you're doing this, more. They're taking them out or whatever, what small children do. Are you opening yourself up to a lot of other liabilities?
Madam Chair, I don't know if you want me to do an interview with the media right now.
Right.
I can tell you that some of these things are covered in the plans, and right now the plans are that they're on.
That's right, and that will be, we're going to get to that later in our agenda. That's in our back to school plans. So, but thank you very much for your comments. And please, we really appreciate all the comments that were sent in, and Marissa for coming to our board meeting. Thank you very, very much. I'll move on to item D, our mental health allocation plan. Dr. Hall.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Superintendent Edison, Board Attorney David Delaney, colleagues, and guests. I stand before you to share our mental health allocation plan for the 2020-21 school year. You all have a copy, correct?
Yes.
For your materials. As you are aware, every district within Florida is required to submit their allocation plan each year to the Department of Education no later than August the 1st. This is our third year. We're being a requirement to send our allocation plan. Before doing so, I would like to share that there are no major changes from this year's plan from the previous year, but rather there was some rewording of some languages for clarity purposes. At this time, I would like to draw your attention to a few key areas within our plan. The first page, we just need to all remember that students identified as at risk of developing social, emotional, and behavioral health problems will need a variety of services depending on the need of the students. We're going to continue with the multi-tier system of support. You've heard that terminology, MTSS. We use that with academics, we use that for behavior, and we're also using that same plan that's been set forth by the state with students who may be in need of mental health needs. If you look at page 5, at the very top, it talks about credentialed mental health providers and staff. The top of page 5, you have a column there that shows what we currently have in terms of employment, a licensed school psychologist that serves the Williston community. We have contracted mental health counselors. We currently have 1 license who's serving Chief of Middle High School. That's as of today. We continue to hire until school starts. We have 12 school counselors, and of those 12, 8 are licensed, have those credentials, and 4 are working towards certification in that area. We have 1 behavior specialist. We have 1 social worker. We've always had 2. We've been having great difficulty for several years here in Levy County to secure a social worker. We continue to look and seek. We have 1 mental health clerk in the Chiefland community who assists with the paperwork, the tracking, the daily communication with outside contracted services and families. Then the state asks for our student ratio to our psychologist as well as our school counselor. And as you can see there, our caseloads for our school counselors are beyond manageable. And this is an area of concern for the nation. There's not enough school counselors. There's not sufficient mental health clinicians to serve the students who are greatly in need of support. So we're all working together and we're reaching out for the same clinicians. So that's why it takes some time to hire staff on board. We've been very blessed in Levy County. We started out slow this time last year, but before Christmas, if not before that time, all of our schools had clinicians and had adequate staff to serve the multitude of students we have in Levy County. On the right, the state wants to know what our recommendation is in terms of how we're going to use those funds, and I'll talk about that in just a few moments. We'd like to hire, and we will. I've been in communication with Meridian Healthcare, as we did last year, to hire 4 more clinicians, mental health clinicians. Yankeetown and Cedar Key will share 1 as they did this previous year. Bronson would have their own mental health clinicians they did this previous year. Chiefland L will have their own because of the size of their school. They're one of our largest elementary schools. And then, of course, we have our 2 charter schools who also will be afforded the same level of support. So we're seeking 4 more clinicians. If you look on page 7, this part was a requirement last school year. It continues to be a requirement this year. It's the time requirement. Some of the concerns the first year that the state rolled this out is that it was taking very long, too long, for students to be identified and to receive services. So you see here under the time requirements that once the student is referred to a school-based mental health services, they have to be assessed within 15 days to determine if the student is in need of services. It's a 15-day window. And for school-based mental health services, they have to initiate and determine the assessment, the identification of those students. And then when it comes to community-based health services such as Meridian, they have 30 days. The point is within 30 days, we need to identify the students who need the services. We need to provide the assessment to determine what level of services they need, and then we need to implement and provide services directly to students.
Dr. Hall, is that different than before with the 15 days?
Last year, it came into play. This is the second year that the expectation is still the 15 to 30 days. It went into place last year. There are no consequences at this moment in time if a district, or in this case, a school-based or community-based does not follow the rules. But we have staff who works very closely with the community, as well as their own staff on school, to ensure that we're meeting the needs of these students, of our students.
So we are.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we have documentation to show that. That's why I would like to see us hire another mental health clerk, say for the Bronson, Williston community, Yankeetown, and Cedar Key, of course, can share, because they do the legwork, so that our school counselors and our clinicians can provide direct services, and they can make the calls and make that connection and be that liaison, if you will, between the community, the parent, and the school. There's professional development at the bottom of page 7 that we know that we're required to provide. One of them would be the youth mental health first aid that you all know about. Every adult that comes in contact with children are required to be trained. Once they're trained, their certification is good for 3 years and they have to renew after 3 years. We have a screener that NEFAC had reached out to one of the vendors who have a screening tool. She's at the University of Florida, and there's going to be a meeting in the next month so that we can we have not done universal screening of our students, but that's something that we truly need to do. And of course, if you find that students need services, then we're obligated to provide. PBIS, we're all familiar with PBIS. All of our schools, with the exception of one, is a PBIS school, but all of our schools are implementing proactive, evidence-based, research-based strategies to support our students. You move over to page 9. This is the mandatory reporting at the bottom. We're mandated to report at the end of the year, in this case by September the 1st. Mr. Weber collects all the data, because every month we have our schools to submit to us how many students have been referred, how many students are receiving services. That data comes to us monthly. So in September, Mr. Weber, as he did last year and the year before, he will submit a report to the state. I will tell you this past school year, not counting COVID-19 pandemic, we served 423 students were referred for services. 423 students was referred for mental health services. And that number continues to grow. And I would suspect that it will be even higher once we open school, just because of the dynamics of this pandemic and kids not being in school and having to transition back to brick and mortar in a structured environment, and there's a lot of anxiety. I suspect that number will be higher for this school year. Page 10 at the bottom, it speaks to how we're going to pay for these services. So you know that the state is in legislation that they will provide financial support to provide these services to our students. And our mental health allocation for this 2021 school year is $277,352, with an increase of $4,761 from last year. So we got a little bit less than $5,000 increase for this new school year. And all of districts did, and it's based on your student enrollment. And you see the breakdown of the allocation. Mental health providers, we're spending almost $259,000 of that $277 on salaries. We need people firsthand on the ground working with our kiddos. Then we have money set aside for trainings and meetings. The state always provides trainings and meetings for those mental health clinicians and those of us who are overseeing this area. And then we have money set aside. You heard me speak early on about these screenings and assessments. We've set aside $15,000 for that. And then last but not least, someone on the board, if not the board as a whole, recommended 2 years ago that we have a flow chart. And so you'll see there's a flow chart for the last page of your approval. It's a great visual for our school staff, for parents and others, just to see how this all works. The role of the teacher, the role of the parent, the staff, the role of the school counselor, and of course that last column, the role of the mental health provider.
I do like that flow chart. That's nice. It breaks it out and it's great understanding, real clear. Thank you.
And I know that you all receive questions from parents and others in the community. And so this will be on our website, and you surely have a copy, and you refer to that. You can always refer them to me or to the school. We will certainly answer any questions and concerns they may have. But I think we've done a very good job. And I always say this, we have not left the child behind in Levy County. If they have not received services, we're not aware. But once it becomes to our attention, services are being rendered. Are there any questions for me?
Dr. Hall,
Yes.
as far as the students go, and I know this is I've got, in what we're going into, and what we're thinking about, and I know we can't consume that to the county, but we're gonna inherit this, I think, this year. But from the parent standpoint, and the stress level and the level that they're fixing to deal with, do we have a plan or protocol in place that we can forward those parents who need some help?
Absolutely. Your schools would tell you, I've been pushing out a lot of emails of resources for families. Up to this point, we even have discretionary projects. They're doing a 5-week online virtual for parents and educators alike to work with them and work with their kids with mental health, preparing them to transition to school. Because we know there's anxiety, we recognize that, the state recognizes that. So we have a plethora of resources, free resources for families in our schools.
Something we could get on our website for people to.
We can. I think Morgan already started that early on, and it got to be so much that.
Just some of the resources are, so if there's any in particular.
Okay, we can do that. Yes, sir. Very good question.
I don't know, Dr. Hall, is there a way from not just the parent, but the student, just thinking about at-home abuse or something that may have happened by a parent or by a family member, is there something we can get out to the students to know that there's a safe person to talk to? I don't even know if some of them are aware of that.
That is a good question. I know there are resources, and typically what happens is that the resources that I'm referring to lands in the lap, if you will, of the parent to share with their student, but you're right, in that situation, for our older students, even for our younger students, higher grades and elementary, I know there are resources that we can certainly push out to students. I'm not sure what that process would look like.
Right.
But that's a very good point you've made. We can certainly make that available to students. I know there's a hotline number, of course, that all of our students are aware of and have been for a number of years that they can call the hotline. We've made that very clear in our schools. But maybe we need to come back around again and just make sure and be intentional to ensure that they do receive it.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Dr. Hall? Mr. Cowell?
Dr. Hall, on the budget there, and then looking back up at the staff there, first question is licensed school psychology student ratio. What's the recommended ratio on that and the school counselor to student?
The state has not really given us a clear, precise number, but we know on the average, it should not exceed more than average of 300 to 1.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we've exceeded that, and so has most districts, if not all districts.
Because that mental health allocation is nowhere near sufficient to provide the services that
Absolutely.
we need.
Because really the state wants us to only use these funds, particularly for students who need tier 3 services. And those are the services that are, while we contract with Meridian, because we don't have clinicians that we can hire as a school board employee. And so the state has been very clear that we cannot supplant, that we should have school board psychologists, we should have school social workers, we should have adequate school counselors. But the reality, we don't have the funds to have adequate clinicians in this area. So we're using these funds to help offset what we don't have to secure staff to provide services to students. Some of the districts, I would say to you, that have school psychologists and plentiful of social workers, et cetera, had some challenges, I was told, when they submitted their plan a year ago in the first year, because it appeared on paper they were supplanting, because they already showed that they had these individual professionals in their district, and now they want to use this allocation money to hire more of the same, whereas we do not have a school psychologist until we hire Dr. Pratt. We've always contracted services, as far as I know, when I came to the district in 2004. We never had a school board behavior specialist, per se. We've always had to contract those services. We've been blessed to have 2 social workers. We're just down to 1, but I'm in conversation with 1 as we speak to bring her on board. It'll be contracted services again, because it's hard to find these professionals who are needed throughout this entire country. And for us, we are competing with Gilchrist County and surrounding districts for the same people. and private industry.
Gotcha. All right. I appreciate it, Dr. Hall. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Terry, do you have a question?
Yes,
Yeah, you've got 3 on-site school people, that mental health professionals, psychologists, or mental health counselors. But even the psychologist is not a clinical psychologist, is she? She's not licensed to diagnose mental illness.
yes, she can diagnose mental illness. Yes, sir, she can. Yes,
What I've read online, they have to be a clinical psychologist.
she has those credentials.
Oh, she does.
I verified that with her. Yes, sir.
Nobody else does it.
Social workers do not. That is correct. But when our Meridian counselors come in, they can make those diagnoses. That's why we're contracting with them, because they have the credentials to do that. Yes, sir, they do.
What's the average time it takes for one of those mobile units to reach the school?
Usually within an hour, if not sooner. That's what they tell us, and that's what the schools have shared with me this year in terms of their turnaround time. They make that call, and they're there within an hour or less. That's their commitment. That's their commitment, and that's what they've shared with us from the very beginning. And they've proven that to be true, based on what I've been told.
They're based in Gainesville.
Yes, they are. But they have an office in Chiefland, so they're closer to our community than they would be if they're in Gainesville.
So it must be exceeding speed limit, some of those schools went out.
That's true. That would be true. But yes, they say within the hour, they would be at school, as well as they also make visits at homes as well. Any parent can call 24/7 and say, I have a crisis, I need you. They have the number. Schools have provided that to parents. So they're available 24/7 for schools as well as at homes.
The school psychologist in Wilson she only stays there at Wilson, she doesn't do that.
Oh, her place full, yes, sir. There's a lot of need in Wilson as well. She serves all the schools in Wilson. But she's also available for consultation to help support schools in time of need. But in terms of a caseload, her caseload is very heavy. And we have to remember as well, it's not about the number of students that each of these clinicians may have. It's about the intensity of services that the students are needing. I'll give you a prime example very quickly. Dr. Pratt, as all of our clinicians did, they provided teletherapy services during COVID-19. By Google Classroom, they interacted with students, they were still receiving their services. And some of the families that she was seeing, I'm sure it was true in other communities, was seeing students 2 and 3 times a week for 30 minutes, 20-minute intervals. So I shared that it's not so much about the number, it's about the intensive need for services for students. And that has to be taken into account when we look at the whole picture.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. Board members, if there are no other questions, do I'm here a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
It's just sad that we don't have more money to provide more resources. I know we do the best that we can, but it comes down to that, because that ratio is just
It's high.
sickening to me. Because there's such a need, especially in a rural county like ours. Our needs aren't being met,
But I guarantee if you reach out to any neighboring district, regardless of their size, I was on a conference call today with some very large districts, and we were having the same conversation. We have, like, Dade County has 100+ psychologists, and they still need more.
I know.
You know, but I feel really good, I really do, professionally and personally, that we're doing real well with our students and providing support. Yes, more would be helpful, but there's no child that's left behind once it's brought to our attention that they're in need. And we have some compassionate school personnel, school counselors, and those clinicians that we've hired and contracted with. They're passionate about the work that we do, and we wish we did it more. And money too.
Money.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hall.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Being back to order, please. At this time, I think Mr. Lott is out and not with us, so I'm going to refer to Mr. Edison to take over our back-to-school plans, item E.
Yeah, so I know Mr. Locke was online, but he's having some internet issues, so I don't know if you may chirp in here. So
Okay?
anyhow, you have with you in your booklet all of the school plans.
Yes.
Okay, you've had them since last week or last board meeting. And I've also like to share with you, part of this that we've got 3 different options that we have as of today. And that's this sheet here that was on your desk. And Melissa's the author. This is one page out of a spreadsheet that she has. And you can see that thus far, if I'm reading this correctly, we have a little over 54% of our folks that responded. Now, have you eliminated the duplicates out of this?
Each administrator is working to eliminate the duplicates. I can't promise that they're all gone right now.
Right. So it may not be 54% that have responded. And so you can see at each school how people responded. And some questions that, again, more questions that we don't have answers for. Like, for example, you look down here at Yankee County School, they have 31 blended. Well, you have a school that has one teacher per grade. How do we do that? So I don't have that answer yet, but that's another problem that we've got to figure out. So you can kind of see what it is, and one of the issues, and also as you're talking about the blended model, is again, this was not an educational model here up until about 3 weeks ago. And so how do we do this for the high school side? There's a lot of stuff out there, but for the elementary side, there's not. And so we're looking at doing this. How do we, from my understanding, the seat time requirement is still there. In other words, we have to document the rigor of the course in the blended model and also the amount of time the kid is spending on the blended model. What all that means is kind of, we don't understand quite yet and how to do all that, but that's the instructions that we've received. And I don't know if any of the rest of you want to pipe in on this. And Morgan, I know you've done a lot of work with that.
The state is having and the press conference is saying now how school districts are supposed to complete and turn in and get through a reopening plan. And essentially, when we get that reopening plan submitted and approved by FLDOE, that will be the mechanism that allows us to move forward with the models that we, as we are sharing now. Most other districts have very similar options. And so I think all districts are kind of in the same boat of figuring out what the state's going to allow. Yeah.
So
no timeline from DOE as they're coming down, and I know there's other districts calling it other than blended, but as I've been reading through.
Yeah, they call it innovative practices or
innovative. Correct, and the actual executive order is called Innovative Instructional Model. That's the term that's used in the executive order. And the plan is due to DOE July 31st. I suspect that most districts, ourselves included, will probably try to submit much before that. I will say that Chancellor Oliva is emphasizing that the goal here is for the DOE to help districts get to approval. We anticipate moving for this.
Then we'd have 11 days from then to the start of school.
Yes.
But we'll be on a conference call with them first.
Saw that email from Chris Doolin with the James Madison Institute guy who said, essentially, we should start calling parents to get an idea on these surveys because the percentage is so low, typically. Is that something we could even consider doing? Just to
Our school administrators have already started that.
call every single body?
They basically what I think their plan stepped into today was to make take their school spreadsheets and match it to their school rosters to see who they don't have answers from. And the initial public message was, if you haven't made your selection, then we're going to assume that you're going with traditional. But they were also going to take that next step to contact as many people as they possibly can to get an actual response into the survey.
So I sit here, I'm a school board member, but I'm also a parent. I'm here to tell you, it's hard for me today to tell you what I want for my children 30 days from now, because depending on what news source you use and what thing you see online, you're getting a different answer. And kind of like what I said about the health department, 5 people gave me 5 different answers about protocol. And if I'm going through that, and I'm just a common guy, just like everybody else, other people are. So I think conversations, and I've said this in the workshop, we can't be forthcoming with information enough to people because people are out there having to make decisions, and we are faced with an impossible decision. And so the more understanding that the general community have, the more understanding we have, I think that's better. And so I think it's a good idea to make those phone calls, and there is some conversation that can be had, because then you get the mama that says, well, in a perfect scenario, I want this, but if the situation remains at this, I want that, and you get a good feel of what we need. So I'm glad to know that we can do that.
And the whole purpose behind this is we're trying to figure out how we need to do personnel-wise as far as whether it's full-time virtual now, because virtual means a lot of different things. And virtual can mean that they're going to be virtual with us, or they're going to be doing virtual with somebody else. But we got to figure out how we want to restaff our schools. And I can tell you from a secondary standpoint, where you have a master schedule, and all right, now I'm throwing something that's not in the plan into the works. It's a nightmare trying to figure all these things out. So that's what we're working on as far as this goes.
And that truly could affect the staffing of our teachers and teacher jobs and how many we need.
It will affect how they're staffed, where they're at. Yes. Like I say, I don't know right now how we're going to serve 31 kids in Yankton County. That's not all the kids reporting.
I think that's what's hard. I think the survey, I think a lot of parents are waiting until tonight. I've heard a lot of parents are waiting until tonight to answer. But yet there are so many questions. I think all of these, the public comments, as a parent, I have all of those questions too. Like what happens, in my opinion, I think it's inevitable that we're going to be shut down in a month. And so as just a mom, I'm thinking, is it worth, I think we should have a solid plan. What if this happens? What if that, a plan in place? And if it takes us maybe starting until after Labor Day to get a solid plan, I don't know. I mean, is that an option? Just so we have a solid plan for the parents and the staff and safety. I don't know. There's so many unknowns.
Only two districts that I know of are talking after Labor Day or way down south.
Well, that kind of segues to my question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but on the radio today, I heard that the Alachua County Superintendent is going to recommend not starting until August 24th, and some other counties are considering that.
I just know all that stuff's negotiated in the calendar. You know how that works.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, maybe that 2 weeks might buy us a little more time to properly plan, get some more answers. Maybe the ebb and flow of that thing will do that number. Maybe it'll give some confidence. I don't know, and I'm not sitting here saying I know the answers, because I know we have talked. This man's losing sleep about it. These 4 people and Chris, we're all losing sleep about these decisions because we don't have a crystal ball. If we had the luxury of a crystal ball, we knew everything was good. That's why I'm going out there. Maybe that's something we could consider to get a little more time to make it.
Yeah.
I'd rather have a short summer next year, knowing what I'm going into.
But right now, what you're just talking about or doing, I mean, we're planning to open as normal. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I mean, it might be a better day, it might be a worse day. But what you're approving tonight are the kind of the plans that how they want to handle the school. So that's what's good.
Ms. Lewis, you open the crystal ball in a minute, so I'm going to ask you, but so 54% or 55% is reported. Looks like we're 700 students between not coming back, blended, and virtual school. Does the other 45%, the crystal ball that we're trying to contact, you may have mentioned a minute ago, because they haven't responded, you might believe that they're coming back to school?
That was the message that we put out to families, mostly in an effort to get them to, if you're not coming back traditional, we need you, if your plan is, right off the cuff, somebody had to ask you, what would you do today? If your answer is 2 or 3, we wanted them to go ahead and tell us that, because that's what's holding up answers, especially for blended learning, is we need to know how many are thinking that's their way, because we need to start working with our master schedules, our staff assignments, who's going to do those positions. But right now, if we went off of this, we don't know how many that is because every family has an answer. So our goal is to get answers so that we can build a solid plan to be able to give families more solid answers.
But because we've never heard anything positive in the past 10 weeks, so if 700 are going to choose that other option, that's a lot of students in and out of classrooms and in and out of hallways. You know, so what we were talking about earlier, whether we get full CDC guidelines of 6 foot and all those other things, and I know every school's constructed different and all, you know, all those things, but it opens a lot of other possibilities. I'm not trying to push students away, but I'm saying there could be a positive in the blended and the virtual helping with the
If we're
issues.
starting
within the
more
school.
kids in a different model of then you don't have as many kids in the classroom.
So if a kid, and I don't know if this is yours, Ms. Lewis. So if a parent says, my child's doing blended learning and gets to be about August 1st, and we see the numbers go down, they feel a little bit more comfortable, can they call up and go, hey, I want my kid to go straight to Williston High School where he's been going for 10 years? Can that be changed to that? I realize we're having to make decisions, but if a parent's more comfortable with the kid at school, that's the best option out there. That's where we want these kids. Can they change it at
We
that
don't
point?
care what they change to when school starts, but once school starts, they need to be committed to that option, like the blended option for at least 9 weeks, because we have to move people around.
And I can understand that if on kickoff day.
And like virtual option, just the way the virtual is done, it has to be a semester option.
Right. And they need to decide that by the end of the month. But I'm saying on the blended and the classroom, where who they're getting their services from, if come right before we get back to school. I understand August 10th, when I step foot, that's what I'm doing.
Right.
But you know, the week before, all of a sudden, there's no cases in Florida. Miracles happen, everything's gone. And I said I was going blended. No, I want to go to Bronson High School because I'm an Eagle. Is that can be done? And then we figure it out from
I
there.
believe it's written in the survey that if you change your mind prior to August 3rd, which is the beginning of our pre-planning, that we asked for you to contact the school if you want to change your option, so that we have that week to plan for it.
Okay.
I feel pretty certain that it's written.
Okay.
We just have to plan to be able to serve.
Yeah.
Because just on record, because the health part of this is very important, but also on the other side, we have fiscal responsibility as board members also. I think I've heard this, but on option 3, if they go complete virtual,
Right.
okay, the school district will be paying for those credit hours to another institution.
Our hope is that we're going to have staff to do this.
Okay.
But the trick with virtual is it's not like the kids are going to school and you count them. We don't get credit for them, or we don't get funded for them until they pass, until they complete the course. So if they're going through, that's why they have to stay a semester, but you can't just change year. But I mean, kids will say, I'm going to go to virtual, and all of a sudden, and we teach them for 2/3 of a semester and say, I want to go to homeschool. We just lost all funding for that kid.
I just wanted it on record so that parents understand that
It's a semester.
right, it's a semester commitment and there's a financial commitment for the school district that when you sign up, we need you to complete that course.
Correct, and that's why also when kids are like in mid-semester saying, well, I want to go virtual. But when they go to a virtual program, they start back over at day 1. They don't start where they go to fall. Virtual programs are built by semesters.
Just for clarity.
I see it's really going to be a time crunch too with like that August 3rd and for the district, for the staff, for the schools and getting all that together. That's another nightmare and headache that parents need to, and students, because that really is going to be.
And one of the things, and I know you do this because y'all do this all the time, communication takes a lot of time.
It
I don't
does.
know how many phone calls you got today, Melissa, but I probably had a dozen. And so there's time, a conversation. So we're also working to train up our, shall I say, our frontline staff so that they know the questions and they can feel, if they don't know the answer, at least they know who to direct it to. But the principal is not physically able to call 500 kids. You know, it just can't happen. And so we're trying to work with some other people, because I know we're going to get flooded with calls and all the different what ifs and questions. So we're trying to make sure we're educating as many people that answer the phones as we can to be able to answer the questions or be able to direct them to the person who can answer. But the principals can't sit there and answer every phone call all day.
It's understandable.
So, or myself, or Ms. Lewis, or Ms. Hires, Ms. Wade, or, so we have to have as many people trained up to answer questions as we can.
Mr. Cowart, did you have a question?
I do. I guess if a student is going to go blended, we know that there's going to be some type of in-person interaction, or so is Zoom or a Google Hangout, would that take the place of, or does it have to be at the schoolhouse interaction?
The conversation that we're having right now, and again, that's where it's at, or it's our understanding right now, and that's why we've invested in Canvas, to try to answer some of these. It's an educational platform, so if people do have to shut down for a while, they can provide services. So these kids would essentially be provided like 4 days worth of work. And you can use the Canvas platform. And the analogy that I use all the time, because I do it all the time, is go to YouTube and learn how to fix your brakes on your vehicle. And you can learn how to fix anything with a YouTube video. And Canvas will allow us to put lessons, whether it's from a teacher doing a video of themselves, or going snagging something from somewhere else and put it on there, and the kids can use the Canvas for their lessons. But they'll come into school, actually come into school 1 day a week. And that, say if you have a classroom of 25, you can have 5 on Monday, 5 on Tuesday, 5 on Wednesday, 5 on Thursday, 5 on Friday. And what we're looking at for when they come in is for their core instruction. And a lot of that depends upon the grade level. Some of that's going to be to evaluate the work, evaluate the progress, because remember, the rigor has to be there for this to count. Because this is going to be, it'll be different curriculum than what they use in the regular classroom, but it'll be the same standards.
And I think we talked about a blended teacher is a blended teacher, and a classic teacher is a classic teacher, right?
We believe that you're going to have enough, once you see the numbers here, that you're going to have blended teachers and you're going to have classic teachers. That's what we believe. Any questions?
Okay. I have one more question. If somebody wants to go total virtual, and we know because of, the funding mechanism that Mr. Etheridge has talked about, and just the unknown of us putting that capital out there, and then however many students get into it and don't realize, do we have the ability to say, look, if you are not a level 3 or higher, or to kind of make some qualifications or some guidelines to say, or internet access, if you live in Rosewood, or if you live down Manatee Springs Highway, or Bronson, 5 Oaks or someplace like that, and you don't have internet access, do we have some guidelines that we can put in place to say, I'm sorry, you may want to pick that option, but that is not the option that's best for your child, where your child can be successful?
Those are good questions, and that's the exact conversation Nick Stark is having with every one of these parents.
As well as their principals, because
Yeah.
the principals have also been contacting the virtual, the families that have selected virtual to make sure they understand what they're selecting, in addition to Nick Stark calling them. But they're having those conversations like you're talking about, Mr. Cowart, about knowing their child from working with them, on school campuses, of concerns that they may have, knowing that the parent has a choice at the end, but they are sharing their concerns with their child choosing.
And I will say also that I am very thankful, when we sat here a little bit over a week ago and we talked about putting the survey that Ms. Lewis has put a lot of time in, and I know others at the district level have put in, of making sure that we have those hard conversations with our parents, and making sure, and here 40% people that have filled out the survey, and I know it's all hands on deck for our administrators and other staff to be reaching out to our parents, because that's what we've got to do to have an accurate snapshot to plan for our future. So appreciate that.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Option one, traditional classroom. Is it going to be a Canvas setting? Is it going to be like a virtual learning? Live?
We're training all of our teachers on Canvas. And so it's going to be something we hope that our teachers make a part of their daily instruction. Because just as you heard here, we don't know what's going to happen. And if we have to, something happens, we want to keep our teachers employed. And so if something happens and they have to take 10 days off, okay, we still want them to be teaching our kids. And so that's why we're working real hard to have the Canvas platform to allow us to be able to do this and provide this instruction and keep people working. So Canvas will be a part, should be a part of the instruction. It's not going to be the only instruction, but it should be something we can do. I can tell you we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Morgan, we have one-to-one devices, 5 through 12. We believe we have enough of them to go all the way down, what's it, the second grade?
Yes, actually, I think through pre-K,
Okay.
a combination of PCP and file computers.
So that's something they can be using in the classroom.
And it transitions well to if that's shut down.
I can promise you, we're going to have things we have to react to.
Yeah.
But hopefully, we're going to be giving our teachers and students the tools so that when they come out there, it's not going to be the March through May experience that they just had. It's going to be school.
My vision of this, and I want to paint it in a kindergarten classroom picture, because to me, that's the most challenging one, not to mention pre-K. But in Canvas, the way that the sample that they showed to us is basically a kindergarten classroom would be set up with a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, kind of like an icon. And so in the classrooms, when the teachers are doing smartboard lessons, they're streaming, a video, they're going into iReady, on the classroom computers. The activities that they're doing digitally within the classroom would be built into the Canvas platform, so that in their classroom, they would open up Canvas. Today's Monday, we're going to click on Monday. And so basically they're going through that practice during the day, so that if a situation comes that they have to work from home, the kids already know, oh, today's Wednesday, I click on Wednesday, what do I do next? And then they kind of have their steps to follow, even though it's classroom instruction like it always has been, but they're going to have this little background resource that kind of organizes them, which will also support our AVID strategies, but it'll support them so that in the event we go home, they can follow that just like they did in their classroom. That's my vision.
Yeah, to me, that's a benefit, that even if we're open 2 weeks, the teachers get a feel for it and the kids get a feel for what it's going to be like when we're all back home.
I think this was asked previously. Is it possible for us to have a demonstration of Canvas?
Yes, we have a training coming up.
I think you may ask about that.
Well, and I think we got an email that you sent a link so that we could have a little demonstration on our email and look at that. And that was very helpful too.
Yes, and we actually are in the middle of the integration right now of Canvas. We started the first half today, so it is our intention to share that with you. We just have to get the system up and running before we can do that. So it may be a meeting or two before we.
Okay, I just think it'd be cool to have it at a meeting before we go back to school, because there are people watching this at home and they could see how that's going to work.
And I can tell you, I've been in education for a long time. I've never seen the change happen so rapidly. And I really feel for our instructors, because they're going to have to learn a lot of different things. And so it's not the same classroom they're going to be going into. It's going to be, I think will be the best for our kids down the road.
Mr. Edison, we've gone over all the classroom and everybody's done a great job and really covered it well, but it was brought to our attention to address the buses. So what about the bus?
Well, I don't know if Gary's on, but the buses are the buses and cafeterias are the two of the most difficult places we have. And again, if they're going to be virtual or going to be blended, they're not riding the bus.
Right.
Okay. And so, but that's another conversation. I know the virtual won't, but that's another conversation, because if they don't ride a bus, we don't get transportation FTE. But currently right now, that's not a plan, and it might end up. So you're going to take a load off the bus, but we're going to try to figure out how many kids are on the bus, set up by family groups. But there's no way, I mean, it costs $130,000. And we can't, right now, you don't have drivers for them. You can't get new ones in.
Right.
So the best that we can do is try to plan and make sure that we have the routes and distribute the kids as evenly as we can. And the lunchroom is the other obstacle, other major obstacle. And Marisa was correct. We've had these conversations about after shooter drill, the kids are diving together, they're supposed to be 6 foot apart. These conversations we have.
Right.
Because security is not going away.
It's not, and that is a very real concern, and I know they have been addressed, and there are not answers for that, but it has been addressed.
So I know Mr. Masters has a plan, and our goal is to not have more than 2 in a seat. We're trying to figure out how many want to ride. But again, it goes back to a funding thing. If they don't ride a bus, then we don't get FTE for the bus, and we already run $800,000 in the whole transportation FTE.
Just to address that, because you brought up the cafeteria and it being challenging, but I don't know that everybody's had the privilege to see, but there are some, each individual school, maybe some outside seating area, no one sitting directly across from each other in the cafeteria. And then there's, I know some of the pickup, the different by multiple students are going to be eliminated. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that there's other precautionary measures. It's not going to be lunchroom measures normal.
Those will be clearly addressed in the frequently asked questions.
Right. Okay.
There's a bus section.
And I think, I know at Chiefland High School, Breeze, they're getting more picnic tables outside, that they're sitting outside too as well. Is that right?
I think it's part of the CARES Act, maybe, that we talked about getting.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and the CARES Act says this is something you can do, and try to get more outside seating and everything else. So we put in there picnic tables, and then we got a whole lot of pushback on that. I think we've overcome that, but we really had to justify to work on that with our picnic tables so folks can sit outside.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Until it rains.
Right, until it rains.
Right.
That's true. Are there any other questions? Do I hear a motion to vote for the back to school plans?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
So I know we had our workshop and we talked about everything, but that was what, 11 days ago? I think my biggest concern is option 1, looking at the school plans. I mean, the classrooms, there isn't going to be social distancing.
It'll be to the extent possible. Again, understand there's going to be less kids in the classroom. And, some of the different directions are out there to make sure that if you have any extra furniture in the classroom that's preventing kids from doing that, they get rid of it. So it's going to be the best of our ability. In our schools, when we have SREP, which is school related educational facilities, and they build the classrooms nowadays for 18, 22, and 25 in the square foot, and that's what they give you. Our schools from the old days, while those classrooms were a lot bigger, back then you taught 35 kids, didn't you? And so the classrooms are smaller by design because of the class size amendment. So our goal is to stick to make sure we're under our class size numbers and maximize the space as much as we can.
Any more discussion? Terry?
How do you survey parents? I was trying to get the gist of how you do it. You send out surveys, you call in,
we send out communication multiple ways electronically. We have through what's called Remind. It's an app we use a lot. A lot of the parents are hooked up. We also have an email version and a text message version. And so it went out in multiple forms to these parents.
You said 52% responded?
50, almost 55.
Right.
Of students, right? Or households. Is that households or students?
That's by student.
That's students.
With some duplicates, because some families answered multiple times. Administrators are having to study all of their lists and delete out
duplicate responses.
Like mama might have answered, daddy might have answered.
So parents and kids that are answering the survey,
Went out to the parent.
went out to the parents. So you're trying to get every single parent to respond to this so you have a better idea of how,
Yes.
what the odds of that happening.
It's difficult.
That's when they're making telephone calls.
About 55%.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item F, our bus loop.
Okay. Little background knowledge here. And as you know, we sold Williston High School and speed with our. And part of Williston High School was on what we consider the Joyce Bullock campus. I mean, technically it's still Williston High School campus, but it was on. So you had kids, there's a road that goes down between the Williston High School campus and the Joyce Bullock campus. We own that road. Blue Rock, the developer, wants that road. But the problem is we use that road currently to pick up our kids. So we're working with Blue Rock to mitigate this problem. And part of this is on the school board and part of it's going to be on Blue Rock. And so on the school board side right here, what you're looking at, I've got this paper turned this way. And this would be the west side, correct, Mr.
The top of the page would be towards the hospital.
Yes, the hospital. And so on the right of the page would be where the road is, and that is the track. And the right is where the home football stands on. And so what we want is to build a bus loop entrance for that track area. So in other words, the buses will come inside down the track, and the kids will load the buses on the track. Now, I personally like it because it keeps the kids in the campus. It keeps the kids inside the fence. Currently, the kids are outside the fence when they load the buses. So this prevents people from walking up and doing different things, and it's just much, much safer for our children. So what we're asking here for tonight is that we go out for a request for an informal quote so that we can get this project started.
And this is our only school that the loading buses that it's not secure, right?
No, ma'am.
It's not.
Well, it's, when you say secure, when you go down, I'm looking like I'm going down our campuses. Okay, like for example, Yankeetown is outside the fence. Chief Elementary is outside the fence. Chief Middle High School, it's kind of inside the fence. Okay, but your Williston Elementary, Williston Middle High School, those are inside the fence. So the bus comes into the school property, and that's where they go. So this is much better, and understand this is kindergarten through second grade.
Right.
Are you talking about loading at the high school track?
Yes, sir.
So the buses come right inside the stadium?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you build a bus loop right in,
The track would be the bus loop.
track would be the bus loop?
Yes, sir.
It's the way it's at the new high school also.
Sir, yes,
It's
sir.
built the same way at the new high school. Multi-purpose.
I move for the request for informal quote.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, sir.
Because there's a breezeways this is separate. This is just the asphalt in the section going out. This is not any of the transfer. The breezeway that's got to be built coming out going to it.
Correct.
That'll be a separate item.
Well, that is, Blue Rock will be responsible for that,
Okay.
not school or county.
Okay. This is not their part.
Correct.
Can I add something? You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, John.
So really, there's three parts to this project, and because of the need to expedite things, this is just the first part, the entrance and the exit onto the track. We would also like to send out bids for informal quotes to add an 1.5-inch overlay onto the existing track so that it will hold up to the load. But our present emergency situation is to get the entrance and the exit. And so that is our most dire need at this point. And then, of course, the third part of this project would be, as Mr. Etheridge said, a covered sidewalk coming down from Joyce Bullock to the edge of the track. And it would be a covered walkway. And that is an expensive part of this project. In fact, it costs about as much as all the paving put together. Is the cost of the sidewalk and the aluminum overhang covering canopy. And Blue Rock has agreed to provide that portion. So basically, we are more or less going to be splitting this project in half. The funds for the paving would be categorical funds that we already have that are designated and earmarked for paving projects. So it's not a general fund per se item.
Thank you, Mr. Lott. Item G, a request for a public hearing. Mr. Edison?
Okay, did y'all vote on this?
Yes, we did.
You have with you this public hearing and also our proposed policies, and I think this is the third time you've seen them.
Yes.
And so what I'm asking you, first off, this is a public hearing, any input from anybody out here on any of the policies, and once we're concluded, I'll ask for your adoption of this policy. And you have the first one here is renamed as parent and family engagement. And then you have the wellness policy, and every year the wellness policy has to be approved. And I can tell you also will have come forth to you at a later time, the wellness plan that has to be adopted. And then you have homeless students. And a lot of these changes are because there's a change in federal law. So it's a change in nomenclature. We went from No Child Left Behind to ESSA, which is Every Student Succeeds Act. And then educational stability for children in foster care. And that one again is a change in statute. Educational public records. And you can see that on that one, the prohibition about collecting biometric information, information on voluntary pre-kindergarten interagency agreements that we have. And then every year, a word or two gets added to the bullying and harassment policy so that we have to come and advertise and change it. I'm trying to get to it. So you can see that on, well, there's a reference to ESSA in it. And then there's also the way that things are changed. You got the addition of tobacco, vandalism, weapons, possessions, and other major crimes.
What did you say, a reference to what?
ESSA, which is the Every Student Succeeds Act.
Right, I
The
see the
federal
change.
legislation that went from.
Right. Okay, I just,
And I will tell you on the bullying policy, it is very prescriptive from the state of Florida. They kind of tell you this is what you got to do. Because we have to turn it in and they look at it. And then teacher aides and volunteers, again, you see the change in the federal legislation. And then you also have it here that our notice of non-discrimination. And basically, this is the adding of down here at the very bottom, or generic, or genetic, not generic information, genetic information. And that has had to change, and also changing the point of contact if there's any investigations from Dennis West and Moral Irons. And this gets posted and published in everything that we do. So those are the policies. So any input on any of these that you may have, and we'll entertain any questions.
have we had any, public, contact the, school board office about this? Is there any comments from the public? Board members, do you have any comments?
Have there been changes any since the last reading?
No, no, sir. Okay. Y'all haven't made any changes the last 2 times.
I'm fascinated. During my time here, the bullying and harassment has thickened. It was very simple when I first saw it. Now it's a lot more stuff.
And I can tell you, there's gonna be a couple more coming to you, for permission to advertise, at least one more that I know. That's just, we just received an update on it. And of course, you got some new laws just passed, there's some changes there.
Mr. Cowart, do you have any comments?
I'm good. All my questions have been answered.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes for the policies. Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes for the June 23rd. No?
No changes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
The minutes?
the minutes,
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. No changes to the minutes.
except for the date that's printed.
Yes, ma'am, that.
Okay, so we have, yeah. So it's the June 23rd board minute.
June 23rd, 2020.
Right, okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve.
Okay.
So,
And I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to approve the minutes. The consent agenda. I'll start with Mr. Cowart. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Wait, I'm sorry, Mr. Cowart, one second. Angela?
Well, two changes. The one change is just noted June 23rd. And then on page 3, number 20, Benjamin Hawkins, we need to change the beginning date to July 1st instead of 15th.
Okay. Mr. Delaney, since we've already gone through that and we've already approved that and we didn't know that, how do we handle that? Just revise that with those changes?
Are you talking about on the agenda? or-
No, it's on the minutes. Is that correct? You were changing the minutes?
On consent agenda.
Oh, the consent agenda. Okay.
Agenda.
All right. So we'll make a note of those changes then before we discuss it then. And that was the page what?
Page 3,
Uh-huh.
page 3, number 20,
Okay.
then Benjamin Hawkins, July 1st instead of 15th.
All right. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Cowart?
I always, hate to see people that are leaving our district, going to neighboring districts, people that have served Levy County students and Levy County well, wish them the best. But in the same regard, it's really nice to see people growing as leaders and fulfilling spots as we have people move to the district or move to other spots. So kudos to Ms. Cribbs and kudos to Mr. Hawkins, both of them. So, and also Mr. Gore, so coming over. So appreciate all their work and look forward to them in their new roles.
Thank you, Mr. Cowart. Mr. Etheridge?
just a couple, when you have the great leaders we have in Williston and have had over the past, when you hear about people like Ms. Lewis coming to the district office, I get nervous about things that shift. And then, we're fortunate, sometimes we have to pull talent from out of our district, but it's always great to see, I call them young people because they're younger than I am, come up through teaching and then into administration and working their way up. And there's, I think that builds for a good morale within, that there's an opportunity to grow within the district. I think it's good. So I won't reiterate, but of course, Ms. Cribbs and Mr. Hawkins are dear to us in Williston, and we're glad that those changes were made. Look forward to hopefully starting a new school year with them. That's it. One more. The MOU for the mental health plan between the charter schools. Okay, is that funded through them, or do we fund that part of it?
Yeah, the money that's allocated to our district, we share that with them as well. They've agreed to adhere to our plan to do it this year, instead of creating their own. We don't have that option, so we share the funds.
Okay. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Lindsay.
I'm just going to echo what Mr. Etheridge and Mr. Cowart said. I'm excited for Ms. Lewis to be in the district office and Ms. Cripps and Mr. Hawkins, and exciting movement going on in our county. And Mr. Gore has some pretty big shoes to fill with Mr. Weber's spot, because I think he's done a fabulous job to lead the county. So good luck to him.
Thank you. Mr. Asple?
Well, at least tonight it wasn't you that stole all my thunder.
That's right.
I started off with Coward, and then they just took off from there. I will, I took the place of Mr. Turner being the old guy on the school board. So I can say this. I can remember years ago, Hillary Cribbs was a teacher. And she was recognized by DPAC, a couple of us about being outstanding. And we said then, wow, that's a superstar. She's going somewhere. So I think it's fantastic to see her move into a principal's spot. I also think it's great to see these deans work their way up to be principal. You know, kind of growing from within. A long time ago, a much older man than I will probably ever get to be, told me, he said, Cameron, you know what the best kind of tomatoes are? I said, no, sir. He said, homegrown tomatoes. And I like to see homegrown tomatoes getting better every day. Now, they may not have been born here, but they grew up in our system. And I like seeing that. I also like seeing where Chittenden Elementary School, we've got a speech and language teacher over there. Speech and language is crucial, especially with little kids. So I like seeing those vacancies filled. Other than that, I don't really have any.
I missed something, Ms. Brookins.
Okay.
We don't, I know in Wilson and that familiar face every day, those crossing guards, and we're doing those contracts with those, with the sheriff's department and our local police forces in our cities. And, you know, that common face every single day at those schools are important. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity tonight, that partnership we have with our city people and our sheriff's department and the job that they do for us at those crossings.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, if you drive through there, those guys out there in the rain still smiling, waving, kids thrilled to death to see them.
Wilson Elementary School, I think we got to talk to them about the candy passing out there because of COVID-19. He hands out candy every afternoon. But kids are smiling, but I didn't want it to go on there. Thank you.
Thank you. I think most all of my questions have been answered, but I am proud of the teachers and the staff and everybody that stepped up and through this challenging year. So real proud of everyone, and I sincerely do hate to see the ones that are leaving, but I wish them lots of happiness. Is there a motion to approve our consent agenda?
So,
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to approve our consent agenda. Our superintendent's comments, Mr. Edison.
I don't have anything in particular, but as you know, and I've said before, our summers are our busiest times ever. And it's been very busy this summer. And a lot of people thank their hard work. Our district administrators, a lot of folks at our schools are really working hard. So thanks to all of them.
Thank you. I will start with our board comments. I'd like to start with Mr. Aswell, because we do not want anyone to steal his thunder.
I appreciate it, Madam Chair. I have one thing, and that's an important thing. I was given a special assignment by our board chairman, and I have worked probably for a good 8 months on it. And
thank goodness.
So here, yeah, I was really quick on it. It's been a doozy. Okay, so let's get started with it. On August 28th, 1987, an epic tragedy happened for the Lee County school system. There was a bus accident out here at the corner of 32 and 337. Some people, I was a kid, I was 18. I remember it very well. And when we get to the names and all that kind of stuff, you'll understand why. But at that time, that was a two-way stop. And being from Bronson, we knew, if you were from Bronson, you knew, hey, stop no matter what, because people are just flying through it. Well, somebody came flying through it one day, and we had a terrible bus accident, and we lost the lives of some students, and we lost a bus driver. And there has never been a tragedy like that since then. The community came together. that moment to do all they could. We had people that were off-duty nurses showing up, helicopters flying in. I can remember Ted Glass got there immediately. He was a highway patrolman. Got there immediately after the accident and stayed well into dark. I was fresh out of school. I had gone to college that day and had my job in Gainesville. I came home and Top Hill and the lights were still going at midnight and trying to get it all figured out. It was awful. It was during the time that Bronson Elementary School was being built, or finished being built. And it was awful. The chairman had asked me to find out who maintains the memorial set up out there. Anybody that's gone that way has seen that. And for over 30 years now, that memorial has existed. So she tasked me with the job of finding out who did that, what person took it upon themselves to do that, because we wanted to recognize those people for doing such a kind thing. So through, it was a struggle. Never have I seen people that did not want to be discovered as much as this. And then when I was pointed to who I needed to talk to and who might be connected and all that, a person contacted me and said that the people that do that do not want to be known. They want to remain anonymous, and that they do not do that out of any sort of desire for anybody to know that, just that they were a part of this community at the time and have felt that that needs to be remembered. And they asked that tonight, when I brought this up, that I share the names of the people that were involved in that accident, and so that there would be a permanent record, again, of that. And so that's what I'm going to do. And also, there are people that never notice this, that the Bronson Elementary School sign, there's a plaque, and it's a memorial on our property to these individuals. But those people were Edith Asple. She was a driver, our bus driver. Distant relation to me, and here's why that was a big deal. I was working, and I got phone call after phone call going, hey, there's been a lady in an accident at the corner of 32 and 337 named Asbel. Didn't get that she was a bus driver, any of that. And a lot of people wanted me to know because they thought it might be my mother. And for a period of about 2 hours, I didn't have a clue. And where I worked at, I was back before the days of cell phones. So I was in the dark. Finally, my mother called and said, hey, it's not me. This is what, and told me what had happened. Anyway, moving on. These are the children's names. We had Charles Wilburn at the age of 11. Tommy Thompson, 9 years old. Matthew Queen, 8 years old. Glenda Morrow, 6 years old. And Benjamin Bennett, who was 4 years old. And at this time, I would like us to just remember those folks. I think it's special that some kind people in our community have taken it upon themselves to do that out of no desire to be recognized. So, Madam Chairman, I report to you that I strive to find out the names, but they do not want to come forward.
There are some exceptional people. I mean, every holiday, everything they change, they keep it fresh. It's uplifting, and it's amazing. All these years that they've done that, it's very noticeable, and so that is amazing. And I know I was teaching kindergarten when that happened. And I had one of the Asple boy in my class, and I think it was his grandmother who was driving the bus, and I remember it well. Thank you very much. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Ashley.
Now you're hard to follow.
That's right.
I have a quick question, Mr. Delaney. I didn't vote. Ms. Brookins is quick on the go on the back to school plan, and I voted nay. I don't know if that's. Okay. I would have voted nay. I didn't speak. Okay. I just wanted to be on the.
Voted now as that reflected.
Okay. And with that being said, I was part of the workshop. I want that to be no reflection on all of the hard work that's gone into that, into the plans. It's just 11 days later, things have changed. I think things have worsened, and there's just a couple of things I would like to kind of revisit. So on that note, I just want to thank everybody in the district, everybody, the principals, the staff, board members. It is a very stressful time, and to the public, we're doing the best we can. So I just wanted to add that in. That's all.
Mr. Etheridge.
I'll have a lot. I just, social media nowadays can be used for a lot of different platforms. And And of course, I hope we use it in our district from a positive standpoint to try to get out information in all the different ways that we do. And it took about 2 hours before I came to the meeting today to try to get a pulse, because I think we dealt with a school safety issue last year, year before. All this is blending together now. That I thought was probably one of the biggest, you know, if we look back when I'm 80 years old in a rocking chair and say, you know, that was the biggest thing we dealt with in school history. And, you know, it'll be big, but I don't know if it's going to be as big as this, because this is affecting our children's education. We could probably put our hands around school safety with physical things. We're dealing with a virus, and there's a lot of truth, myth truths, and a lot of misunderstandings today, and unknowns of what we're dealing with. And you know, we in history, United States, we've never had a population at the level it is now with a virus the way it is now, and a world that moves as fast as our world moves now. And all that said, Levy County has always, that I've known in history in my 45 years here, have always pulled together to make our programs work. And every decision that we make in this is not going to be right by any means. And it's surely not going to fit every student. And every parent's not going to agree with every one of them. But I just, there's some hard decisions that parents are going to have to make that are going to affect them personally because of physical restraints within their family. And I understand that. And I hope that everybody understands that the school district has worked the best we can with the facilities, with the infrastructure, with the internet that we have available, understanding that we've been in Tallahassee for the past 3 years, all of us begging for better internet service. There was a small Band-Aid put on it this year, $5 million a year over the next 5 years. Someone told me today that's like spitting in the ocean and telling you the tide's coming in. It needs to be addressed fast and quick, because it's probably our answer to, I don't want to be gloom and doom, but I have to keep it pretty simple sometimes. But this virus is kind of like the boogeyman, and as long as we hide in the closet, we're not going to get it. And I understand that, and we've done what the CDC said, and we've lessened the curve. And then we came back and went out, and it's spiking again. And there's probably not any doubt when we start back school, we're going to see another one, because that's the way it works. And I don't have any faith that there'll be a vaccine within a time period that's to our educational value to our students. So as we make our decisions today about what we vote for, know that I voted today not to send any one of your students back to school, but to give you 3 options of what you want to do. And if you're nervous about putting your student back in the classroom in a normal brick and mortar, which is not going to be normal as it was last year, there's going to be a lot of changes, then I fully understand. I respect your opinion. We're going to do our best. I think everybody's hard to provide them with the education the best of our ability. That's the reason I voted go ahead and did tonight. So that's it, Ms. Brookins.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cowart?
Yes, ma'am. I feel like we've had a little bit of church here with Mr. Asbell, and as a young child, not quite 13 years old, I was 12 years old. I vividly remember August of 1987 because I had a foreign exchange student, and my mother picked us up from school, and we were within about 2 minutes of that bus crash happening. And I vividly remember people coming from all throughout our communities, people tending to children, emergency people, and it's left a lasting impression because for a number of years to this day, I passed by there going to work, grew up 5 miles north of that that site. And so I sure appreciate the hard work that went in and goes in for those people to take care of that corner. Now to transition a little bit. we're going to get on the other side of this virus. And there's been a lot of people that have put in a lot of hard work through this summer and continuing to put in work to give plans, to put the pieces of the puzzle in place. And I really appreciate Melissa Lewis and Morgan and the superintendent and John Lott and our administrators of coming together for the workshop so we could talk things out. And we've got to continue fine-tuning things. We're nowhere near the end of this, and I hope that we'll continue to find ways to be able to meet the challenges that we're going to see day in and day out. But at the end of the day, we will get through this. Now, on a positive note, I'd like to just thank the Board of County Commissioners, the Tourist Development, the Levy County Schools Foundation, and the Nature Coast Business Development Council, along with our board, of putting together and coming together for a public relations video that Kaylee Wade has worked extremely hard with, and some of our district staff and our school foundation members were able to be a part of. And I got to see a sneak peek of that video and really excited about that, the work that's went in on that, because that's been a long time coming. And then the last thing that I'd like to just share is that when we get to the point and we've started school and we're going through things, I ask us to remember that we want to treat people with compassion and grace. We need to hold people accountable to their job, but we have to treat them with compassion and grace. And we're going to get through this. And I appreciate each and every one of you being there and being at the table. And I apologize that I'm not there with you. There's nothing more evident that'll make you thankful for living in Levy County than to have a little personal crisis that you're trying to go through, and the amount of people that reach out, lift you up, and let you know that they're praying for you, they're thinking of you. Can I do anything? So I thank you to each and every one of you that have reached out to me, and I appreciate that. So we are blessed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coward, and we hope to see you next board meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Brookins, I did forget one thing. I did have a text message while I was sitting here asking if, as soon as we can get this video up on our website so parents can view to see what took place, and so any questions they have, and that way we can kind of filter that out and make sure they've got that information. So if we could do that quickly, please.
Thank you very much. For my comments, I have a concern that I don't know that's exactly possible, but I'd like to strive for. I know that at Chiefland Elementary, there's been always ongoing problem with the pickup. And I think with our plan of all parents in their car and picking up, I think it's going to be even more congestion. And so that always has been a problem at Chiefland Elementary. Could we possibly maybe work with the city, a plan that they can help us with the traffic flow and the direction? I know there's not enough staffing to, help with that and direct, and it would be a very hard situation. But I think it's going to cause a little more frustration with pickup and everyone staying in the car, and there's a lot of pickups with the elementary students. Is that a possibility, Mr. Edison, for us to go to the city and look at that?
I'd be interested in hearing what specific ideas you have in mind.
I know, with the short turnaround, it says we're back up on the road. There are going to be issues there. So, maybe even just bringing that to their attention and working with them. But that's going to really be a problem.
I would just imagine. First off, student pickup at the beginning of school every year is an issue at every school.
Right.
Okay, until things get ironed out. I would imagine that more and more people are going to be bringing their kids to school than normal. And so that parent pickup will be busier than it ever has been.
Right.
until things get back to normal, whatever that new normal is. So that's something that we'll talk with our administrators about. Specifically, I'll talk about chief, and I don't know, again, whatever you envision, I'd like to hear is what the solution is, because I don't know.
Wrap them around those pine trees and everywhere and going all the way back, so that it's not just, it's gonna be a road problem.
Folks that have different highways out there.
Right.
So we'll have to work with different entities.
That's right. So hopefully we can, maybe have a discussion with them and talk to them.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Edison, can you, please give us a little brief update on what you've heard on the new, school construction?
Okay. We've just had our initial meeting this week with Parish, and just to go over some different things and different ideas that they have with the school. So we're just trying to wrap our heads around some different things. And it was just myself, John, and Mr. McClellan, and the architect in Parish. And so we just had an initial conversation. And so I know Mr. Mott is working to have some, schedule some meetings that'll have different aspects. For example, there'll be a meeting that just talks about HVAC. And there'll be a meeting that talks about just technology. And so the different aspects and different components within the thing, and get different players there. And of course, just want to be a time for different folks that's going to involve different folks from the school and community members as well to be part of it. So there'll be invites coming out.
Okay, great. We'll look forward to that. That's exciting.
That's a good word.
That's positive, and I like ending on that positive note. So thank you very much. If there are no other comments, thank you all for being here tonight, and board members, executive session, that's correct. Thank you, and